What is the biggest bullet you've ever dodged? I was subletting an apartment in college and got zapped by the electric stove. Gave notice immediately and moved out with very clear reasons why I was moving out. The building burned a few weeks later. Lol, I cannot stop imagining you getting a static shock and then just packing your poop. I know that is not what happened, but still haha. I was stirring a pot with a metal spoon. The spoon touched the pot and I got a zap. Ended up on the desk behind me blinking from the flash. Sold my bar and grill business in August 2019. Sold my 3 restaurants in February 2020. For way more than they were worth. Now 2 have closed. Damn man. Just right before the pandemic hit US. Crazy luck. Yeah, I feel bad, but the guy who bought them was some huge millionaire, so I am sure he's okay still lol. I was a teen driver not paying attention at an intersection at the crest of a hill with low visibility when the light turned green. The car behind me honked, and just as I was about to go, a truck barreled through the red light on the perpendicular road at decidedly ludicrous speed. If I had been paying attention and gone when the light turned green, I very likely would have been T-boned to death. Closest call I've ever had. I was out kayaking on a lake and several bullets whizzed by me. There was a distinct crack buzz sound as it went by. I think some people were just out plinking in their backyard, adjacent to the lake, and didn't think a backstop was necessary. This also happened to me a few weeks later when I was paddling on a small stream. Bullets whizzed by above the bank, just over my head. I do not think anyone knew I was there either time. Regardless, when you go out and shoot stuff, make sure there's a backstop. FFS. Also, I do not know how big the bullets were, so I am unsure which was the biggest bullet dodged. As a dead guy, I would be so pissed off to learn my life ended because I was floating in a goddamn boat at the wrong second. How did you die? He probably stopped living. I matched with a guy on Tinder who played for the Atlanta Falcons. He was really charming and seemed nice. He asked me to fly down to Atlantic City for Memorial Day weekend. Said he would pay for everything: airfare, hotel, food, etc. But I had never met him before and he refused to give me his phone number. I was uncomfortable flying to meet a stranger, so I told him no. 2 weeks later he was on the news for kicking and killing his girlfriend's dog. What's with Atlanta Falcons and dogs? Not even trying to be funny, like really. That's messed up. If they kicked footballs like they kicked dogs, maybe we'd win a fucking Super Bowl. 2005, my friend and I evacuated New Orleans 2 days before Hurricane Katrina and drove to Mississippi with the little money we had. We were trying to decide on where to stay for the night, and it was between a mid-range hotel or the really cheap motel. Decided to spend a little more for the hotel. During the night, the eye of the storm came through Mississippi and flattened the roof of the motel we decided against. My mom wasn't going to leave for Katrina. I told her I was going to take me and my little sister and hitchhike if she didn't pack the car and leave within the hour. My dad didn't leave and he ended up on the roof with our neighbor because our house got flooded. No way all of us would have survived. Katrina decimated my town. Everything 2 miles inland or less was destroyed. I was booked on Pan Am Flight 103, which went down over Lockerbie, Scotland. I didn't have a premonition or anything supernatural. I just decided to cancel my seat. Didn't think anything of it until the plane went down and my mother had written down my flight plan and reminded me. This was back in the day when you could cancel without a penalty up to a couple of days in advance. Pro tip to avoid the few days away cancellation fees: call or go online and reschedule a flight for a week or 2 out. Then wait a day and cancel. Thanks for the tip. Physically, a bus. I grew up in Bermuda, and since it is such a small island, cars are limited to 1 per family, and everyone drives mopeds. I was driving into town, and came up to a red light behind a bus. As is tradition, I scooted around the bus to be in the front of the line of traffic. Literally 2 seconds later, a second bus smashed into the back of the first bus at like 30 miles per hour. I would have been pancaked. Without question. 100 dead. I just sat on the side of the road for a bit and thought about my mortality. Edit: my only other Bermuda bus-based encounter was driving home from my first job in the rain. An oncoming bus in the opposite lane went through a massive puddle and sent what looked like a tidal wave of water right at me. It literally picked me and my little Yamaha V50 right up and swept us off the road onto some grass. So I guess in the end it was me won buses won. My first ever boyfriend dated me when I was 14 and he was 16. We only dated for 1 week before he took me into the woods and forced me to kiss him. I started to feel icky and broke it off that same day. 5 years later I found out that he was now in prison for raping 2 14-year-old girls. About 6 months after I left my ex, he got caught sexting a 12-year-old. He was 34 at the time. Edit: I had the wrong age. He was 34 when it started. By the time he was in jail he was 36. My first serious boyfriend as an adult is now serving time in federal prison after being busted for distributing child pornography. Absolutely horrifying. I had 2 job offers in different states at the same time. The one I didn't take was offering more money. But I just didn't gel with the guy who would be my boss and really liked the guy who would be my boss at the lower offer. The better offer was in a state I had always wanted to live in, for a company I admired. But something felt off, so I went with the lower offer. I ended up meeting my wife in the city of the lower offer. Meanwhile, the company that had given me the higher offer abruptly closed and laid off their entire staff with no severance, so if I had taken that I would have been stuck on the other side of the country with no job and no money. Not me. A Dutch mate of mine living in Tasmania had to visit his sick mum in Amsterdam. Booking his flight online, he said to his wife, "You know, I am sick of flying Malaysian Airlines. The food is poop. The hostess are miserable. It cost more. But I am booking with Singapore." So, instead of dying on MH17, he was on a plane 40 kilometers ahead of it. Edit: just to clarify, he was on way home from UMS. Butterfly effect: if someone at Malaysia had made a better menu he could have died. Or nobody would be dead if he took the flight. We'll never know. Had a friend who asked if I wanted to move to CA with him and his family. I was 16 and thought it sounded fun. I didn't know at the time, but he was actually rescuing me from my insane mother and a not so happy home life. When you are abused, sometimes it is hard to know you are abused until you become an adult and gain the perspective. I shudder to think what would have happened to me if I had stayed there. That's interesting. Can you elaborate on the situation if you do not mind? Like, were you close with them that they'd be okay to live with them in their same house? And if so, are you still close with them? If you do not mind. I really needed a job and the manager at a dispensary in my area offered me a spot. I said no, and 4 days later they were raided and everyone got arrested. I am confused. Did they not have a license? Or are the feds just raiding dispensaries because it's technically still illegal by federal law? Yes, the latter exactly. That's kinda fucked up. No. If they illegal in the state. Edit: literally a liberal Canadian. So why all can chill with the Republican accusations? My ex-girlfriend moved out of my house a day before the first lockdown in Spain. She previously pulled a knife on me. Dude. Thank God. That time I didn't go along for the ride when a friend of mine was running weed years ago. Back when it was more illegal. I was bored and unemployed at the time, and passed on this trip because I had to go to a job interview to be a zombie for Halloween festivities at an amusement park. I got a job. My friend got arrested and did 30 days in jail. That sounds like an awesome job. Jail isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Don't go to sing jail, Julian. I broke my lease and moved out of a terrible apartment complex I was living in to move back home because I was broke. 2 weeks later the whole complex burned to the ground from a meth lab in another unit. A few edits for some commonly asked questions. The apartment was right outside of downtown Birmingham. I didn't have renters insurance, broke 20yo at the time, so wouldn't have got any kickback from that. I did end up getting my security deposit back, which they said I had forfeit by breaking the lease, so that was nice. That meth lab wasn't mine. I packed mine up and brought it back to Florida with me where it belonged. I got on an intercity bus and almost sat in the middle, but moved and sat at the back. The bus later collided with a truck and got opened up like a tin can. If I had sat where I originally intended I would have been killed. I was late to my bus, and instead of running to catch it, I decided to miss it, and it was later hit by a speeding truck. Caught the one behind it and later saw the aftermath. 2 people died. It does raise the question, if you did run down the bus with the 30 seconds of it stopping to pick you up, have avoided the crash. Not me, but my friend. We were in a bar and she was talking to a dude she met on Tinder. When she turned around, I saw him put something into her beer. I walked up, pretended to stumble, and knocked it out of her hand. Apologized. Told her I'd buy her next beer. And when we walked over to the bar, I told her what he did. We left right after. Decided to grab a case of beer and play Mario Kart at night instead. I only tagged along because she asked me to, which I am always perfectly happy to do. Glad I did. Pro tip to people: if you aren't in a shitty establishment, tell the bartender. The rapist may get some repercussions. At least kicked out. If you're in a shitty establishment, just FO. If the rapist is a regular, the staff may have their back. Could get sketchy for you. A year ago, almost to the day, I was offered a new job. It was exactly what I was looking for and was really excited. They told me they would email a contract, but after a week I hadn't had anything. After a lot of chasing, they told me they'd change the structure of the organization so the position wasn't available. I have a month's notice for my current job, and if I had taken the job, my notice period would have been after the cut-off date for furlough in the UK. The new job was in an industry that collapsed through the pandemic, and the industry I work in has boomed. If I had received that email, I would have probably been close to bankruptcy now. In what industry do you work? Mask making. Undertaking. Finishing up my paper route when I was a kid. Walking home on the sidewalk next to a busy road with sister on the inside. Me dragging our little buggy on the outside. Middle of winter. Car jumps the curb and takes out our buggy. Neither of us know what the heck had just happened other than the ungodly scraping sound and that our buggy was gone. Find out later that a driver saw us run home scared and brought back our buggy, which was utterly destroyed in a crumpled heap. I was pulling the cart and my hand was on it, so I am not sure how I avoided eating chrome that day. Not a single scratch on me. I still think about it regularly, and it's been over 30 years. Was driving on the freeway in the right lane when there was a sudden traffic jam ahead. I slammed on my brakes and was about to swerve onto the shoulder when I noticed that I wasn't sure the semi behind me could stop, and I didn't know how long we actually had. A shoulder construction was happening at the time. Made the decision to rear-end the car in front of me to stay off the shoulder. The truck went onto the shoulder, brakes squealing, and finally managed to stop when the back tires of their trailer were level with me. Good thing we weren't in the center lane and that we happened to have a shoulder at that moment. As a bonus, I stopped in time and didn't hit the car in front of me after all. Though I would have happily taken that hit and hopefully only would have shook up the people in front of me in place of literally being hit by a truck. You have some good split-second decision-making skills. Attempted suicide. Ended up passing out in some bushes near the train station. Early the next morning, a girl I went to high school with who I barely knew saw me while she was boarding the train for a college interview early in the morning. She recognized me and told the conductor. He dismissed me as a junkie who just needed to sleep it off. She said, "I know him. He does not do drugs or drink. Call 911 now. 3 days in a coma. etc. etc. I am very grateful. Edit. I expected this to be an into-the-ether cathartic post that would go fully ignored. Thank you for showing your humanity. Internet. I promise to update when things come together." Did you talk to her afterwards? I really should have. I was in the hospital for around a week and then a psychiatric hospital for another week. After that I was too young and ashamed to contact her. Maybe now is the time. If you were in a better headspace, I totally would. It probably impacted her as well, but she doesn't want to reach out and fear that possibly you were embarrassed or don't remember. A few months ago I was driving on I-80 at night when out of nowhere the biggest buck I'd ever seen is in the middle of my lane. I did exactly what you're not supposed to do and swerved. And thankfully managed to keep the rear of the car content with it. I literally shaved the buck's ass. My mirror was folded in. I know you're not supposed to swerve, but I drive a tiny little thing and the buck's body would have gone through my windshield into my and my wife's face at 70 miles per hour.